Hello and welcome to the Freedom Podcast, and we're back in the room together again because we had two such great conversations last time. I wanted to make use of the fact that you're still here in person rather than doing it over a video call.
Oh, it's so much better, isn't it?
Oh, it's great, isn't it? Can't we do this all the time?
Being together, being able to punch you. No, it's been really great just hanging out together and talking about some of these great topics.
Yeah, so we have recorded this one the week after your Sunday here.
Yeah.
And we had a great time, didn't we, this Sunday that we were together?
What is going on in Raleigh? What is happening
God's
in the
up to
church?
something.
I mean, me and H came in yesterday to the new venue, the school, blown away by it. The people, the teams, but just the whole set. You are set up for God to move. And heck, didn't he move yesterday?
Yeah.
I mean, you had nearly 500 people in the place on yesterday morning. 500 people. I mean, you were, wasn't that long ago, you were 70-ish or...
Yeah, year and a half ago.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. I mean, I don't know what that is. Six quadruple? I don't know what they call it. But what God is doing here is amazing. And it feels like that momentum is building. And the amount of people that we spoke to, testimonies of life change, like people coming in, finding a home. I think that was one of the things I heard a lot, is people referring it as home. And I think for us as pastors, that is such a great thing. This isn't about a place you just visit for an hour and a half and quickly, get out of the door. This is about finding your place, finding your home, your purpose, your people. And I love that whole thing that says, come on, welcome home. And we met so many yesterday, and you're doing a great job. Love it.
That's awesome. And we did Growth Track, which is like for our new members yesterday. And you're right, that is something that people continue to come back to, is this idea of a home where they feel comfortable. And I think about, again, people watching this, they care about kingdom things. Yeah. They want to build kingdom. They want to see the kingdom come in their lives, in the lives of others. And I think one of the ways that you do that is that you create that kingdom home. I think as leaders, as pastors, but also any follower of Jesus, we need to be able to make home. We have that phrase, don't we? Homemakers. We often use it as, maybe the wife who in the relationship takes a house from being a home. And I think that there's a parallel there with us as the people of God, is that sometimes we've got a house of God. We've got somewhere where there's a gathering happening. How do you make that house feel like a home? What is it that makes the difference to people feeling like they are coming home, that this is a homely environment?
Yeah, well, for me, I think it's value is the number one. The number one thing is that I'm valued. If you don't feel valued, and this is simply by, welcoming people and it being genuine. And I've seen that here in your church, is the way that people are arriving. You don't know them, but what you're doing is you're saying, do you know what? That hospitality. You've been around to different people's places, and some people are more hospitable than others.
Right.
And it is a gift. The Bible says it's a gift, hospitality. But I think we should have that hospitality in our church as well as our home. I think it starts in our home. But when you have that hospitality where it's like, do you know what? Our door is open. Come on in. You're special. There's something of value about the fact you turned up today. And no matter how, big we grow, I think we really want to keep that small. We want to aim small. And sort of, so we don't miss those small things. And that, just valuing people who you don't know what their journey is, what they've been through. And that always, impacts me. I met a few people yesterday, and they just start telling you about some of the tragedy or the hectic backgrounds they've come from, and they're coming in. And this is our chance to say, come on in, come and see what God is doing, see what God has in store for you. So I think that whole valuing people, genuinely just speaking to people, and making them feel that there is a place for them. That's the first step. It's up to them then whether they think, hey, I want to take this step further. But it starts off really with, do I feel welcome?
Absolutely right. I think that another big part of making a house into a home, making a house of God into a place where people feel like they've come home, is preparedness and preparation, and the way that you prepare a home. If you go into an environment and, I don't do all this stuff, but the lamps are on, the candles have been lit, the scent is there.
Right.
They've thought about your arrival.
Yeah.
And it's very different when you come into another space where it feels cold. And so just translating that back again into how does church feel? Are we making the preparations for people to come in and feel like we've actually got ready for you here today?
Yeah.
I remember someone coming along to the church the first time, doing our growth track and having conversations with them. And they say, do you know, one of the things that impacted me on the morning was I went up to the cafe bar where we serve our drinks. And they said someone had arranged the napkins in like a fanning out style thing. I'd never even noticed this. I've never seen the napkins. I didn't know someone was doing that, or when anyone had thought that would be a good idea. And it blessed this person enough to share it and be like, when I saw that, it made me thought that someone's prepared for me to be here. The attention to detail, the care. So for me, particularly as a man, I've never even noticed, fanning out team. But the preparation of that actually ministered to someone and spoke to them. And again, made them go from feeling like a house to a home. So those preparations, those little things that we do every Sunday, they can really make a difference to impacting the way that someone feels.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And when we create that value as well, I think part of that is really being there to serve them. So you have serve teams, essentially those are volunteer people. But I love the fact that you've taken it almost away from, hey, this isn't our duty. No, we want to serve people. And that's the heart of Christ.
Yeah.
It's like about serving one another. You don't know who's coming in, whether they friend, foe, cynical, open. What you're doing is you're saying, we're going to open up our heart as a church and we want to serve you.
Yeah.
And that is the heart of Christ. And in serving, it's, I think it just says that we want to be here to give you an amazing experience, to, be ready to hear a great message. So we're setting an environment, and that's what you're talking about, setting the light, everything we're doing our best to create the best way. We're setting things up for you to win by coming in. So that guest that comes in, it's like they've thought about this, and what we do with it is up to us. But that's what all of our serve teams are doing. Those individuals are saying, do you know what? I was one of those people that came in. Someone did it for me.
Yeah.
And now I've got the privilege of doing it for them. And when we hear the stories, there were eight salvations yesterday in church, plus so many responses. I mean, I don't know, a couple of hundred responses of people saying, I need to turn the page of where I've got stuck and I need to move into what God has for me, to release the potential God has for me. And you saw all these people stand up in response. It's like, that's what we're doing when we're setting the house. We're setting the place. We're setting the house of God. And we're getting ready for him to move and speak. And then when you see these people come in, and some of them taking a big step, moving from where they got stuck through life, that they have an investment in that. Because like, we're here to serve. And that's why I love this concept of come and serve. Serve my church, love my church. God will move and he'll use it. Not everyone is going to, respond. Not everyone is going to say, I love your candles. They're not all, but that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on those that do come in, that we have set things up in a way that they can meet with God, and we can create an environment where people are so impacted. It's like, these are my people. I want to belong, and there's a place for everyone to come in. And then it's like, right, how do I do that? That's what Growth Track obviously is about, is coming in and saying, look, what can I bring to the table? I want to be a part of something. And we are great believers in it's more blessed to give than receive. We all love receiving, but when you can give and be part of someone's story, their life change, it's just the most amazing thing.
It really is, and it makes such an impact. I think as well, the way that you can make somewhere feel like a home for someone is that there's a place for them. And when you create that space where it's like, here you can come and be, and we've prepared a place for you. And that's what Jesus says to the disciples, is that I'm going ahead to my Father's house to prepare a place for you.
Isn't it?
And that's what we're trying to do every Sunday, is we're trying to prepare a place for them to come to know their Father.
Yeah.
And so we're actually echoing something of heaven every time we go and prepare that space, that environment, where we create, whether it's we're putting out a chair, whether it's we're getting a hospitality space ready, we're preparing a place just as Jesus prepares a place for us.
Yeah.
And that is how you feel at home, where it's like there's somewhere you can sit, there's somewhere to be yourself. And I think about how someone, again, was sharing with me yesterday how they came into our church, someone saw them walking through the corridor and saw that they were alone and said, "Hey, is it your first time?" "Yeah." Why don't you sit with me today? And that again just says something like, I've got space for you, not only here's a chair for you, I've got space for you in my life. And I think about, again, people watching this right now, all over the world in our churches, and thinking, when was the last time you sat next to someone
That's a great challenge,
that you
Josh.
don't know, or you said to them, "Hey, come sit next to me," and actually invited them and took some time? That's how you stop it from feeling like an institution, an organization, and more like a family, from a house to a home.
Yeah, I do love that principle. It's really challenging. Those of us that, are in our church, they're part of our church. You might have a role, whether it's I serve on the kids team, serve on hospitality, whatever that is, our media teams. But essentially, our guests are the most important aspect when people walk through that door. And it's funny how we get wrapped up in our role. I'm doing my role.
So true.
And we can think, someone else is taking care of that. But it's a great challenge to say, when was the last time I was looking out for that guest or those people coming in that, it's one thing that I think we should do is at least greet new people, because we can so easily get in our group.
Right.
Someone else is doing that.
Right.
And this is a great challenge for us, is how are we adding value to the people walking through our door? Because if they walked into your home, you would expect, the host to greet you. And I think there is something about greeting, about, come on, I'll take your coat. There's something about that. And yet, when was the last time perhaps we did that, where we recognized someone's or introduced ourselves and stepped outside of our group or our busy role? And we lose something when we come into church, and maybe we've been involved for a few years and now it's about getting the role done. I've seen, sometimes, hey, I'm on worship and I set up my instrument and do practice and then pack it down and then go. Can you imagine how impacting it is for that, that new person to be, in the cafe afterwards, and then for the worship person they just saw worshiping come up and say, "Hey, great to meet you. Thank you so much for coming." It doesn't take a lot.
Yeah. Right.
I've heard people say, I don't really know what to say. I'm not good at small chat. You don't need to say a lot to be genuine, just to recognize people, to just value them, to acknowledge people, to train yourself, even in speaking to people. I think it is, sadly, not all of us were, trained in a confidence to speak to strangers. But I think it's the job of the church. We're here to show the love of God. And if you're almost removing yourself from the responsibility of welcoming the lost, welcoming the disconnected, welcoming the people who are looking for a home. You could be exactly the right person. In fact, I was just thinking of one of your leaders that, I was talking to, and he's been through in his past, he's been through divorce. And he was just saying how, lately there has been an amazing number of men coming in who have been through divorce. And God's connecting him. And straight away, there is a language that you can speak. Because within church, sometimes it's like, I don't know how your church feels about me, and it's difficult for me to come in. Perhaps I'm not even a believer. How, am I sort of somehow, I've got a black mark now? And God's using this guy in your church to say, come on, there's a place for you. And I'm using that as an example because the Bible talks about the gift of interpretation,
right,
of tongues, and without getting into tongues, not getting distracted by that. I believe that God gives us each an interpretation to the world that we're in. And in the world that we're in, there's so much confusion. There's so much chaos. People can't work out the pain, the breakup, the damage. So you use a divorced person that doesn't know Jesus. There's so much going on. But what he's done is when we come to know Christ, I believe that he gives us a language that we can speak to the world and say, do you know what? This is what it means. Do you know what? There is hope the other side of this.
Good.
Do you know what? It's because there's something missing in your life. Do you know what? We have the language, and I believe that the Holy Spirit, sometimes we limit it to, the Bible says speak in tongues, then there's an interpretation. It's bigger. The Holy Spirit, he can interpret the world's chaos through his church. And if you're part of his church, you're someone that needs to speak into that. So when people are coming in, I'll often think, hey, there's this guy who's just come in from the army and he's searching for God, but he's in church. We got guys from the army who absolutely love Jesus. So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, I want you to meet Peter.
Yeah.
And straight away they connect, and there is an openness because they're in our home with a connection. And then suddenly they're talking the same language, but then they're saying, do you know what? I've struggled since I've been, active and stuff I've done and how I carried that. And he said, let me tell you how I carried it.
Really good.
There's someone I know. His name is Jesus.
I love that.
Translation to the lost, translation to the disenfranchised, those people that are struggling. That's all part of our home. That's part of the church. And that's where you find healing.
Yeah.
So then you create healing. This isn't just about lighting candles. This isn't just about bringing the good news. Man. It's about healing, redemption. That's what our homes, our church, the house is for. It is a place where we see these things take place. And that's what we're believing for every week.
It's really good. What it makes me think of as well is of the prodigal son, and how the prodigal son, if you don't know the story, he goes away from his family, he messes up big time, he squanders all that his father gave him, loses everything, ends up feeding pigs in another country far away, is so hungry, he's envious of the pig's food, comes to this realization that the servants in his father's house were eating better than he is now. And he thinks, well, I messed up, I've offended my father, but I would be better off if I just apologized and just said, hey, I know I'm not good enough anymore to be your son anymore. That's gone.
Yeah.
But if I could just be a servant in the house. And he goes back and he makes his way from the foreign land back to his father's house. And he then sees his father. He makes the speech, and it's like, right, I've messed up, and I know I can no longer be your son, but I'm willing to be a servant in the house. And the father ignores him and puts the ring on his finger, the robe around him, sandals back on his feet. And he said, no, you're going to be a son in my home. It's not good enough for you to just be a servant in the house. So he had this mentality where he comes as, I'm going to be a servant in the house. And I think that there are a lot of people that walk into our church that the reason we don't see them come back is that they feel like they could not possibly be a son or a daughter here.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. And that's what the prodigal son felt.
Yeah.
And with valid reason, he messed up. People have messed up lives. And so they maybe don't see themselves in that way. And our job to make it feel like a home is to tell them that they're a son or a daughter. Tell them there's forgiveness and grace for them. Tell them there's a place for them, that they can have new life because of the grace of God. That's how we take it from being a house. A house can be cold. It can be an institution, an organization with standards. You think about if you're a servant and it's like you've got to be up to standard. You've got to turn up to work on time. But a family, it's an open fridge. It's that you turn up as you are. There's a comfort about being with one another. And that's what we need to create an environment every Sunday for people with a servant mentality that need to come and capture what it means to be an adopted son or a daughter that's come home.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the things that I'm always challenged by is how, as human beings, we meet people, we see people, and we form judgments about them.
So true.
The way they look, the way they might speak. And some people are standoffish. Some people are, appear a bit defensive, cynical. You do. You very easily, quickly form an opinion, which can be a prejudice. And God just constantly challenged, don't you do that. Don't you presume because you are seeing a reaction or people, are defensive, that somehow they don't need what you have to say to them. And I think that's really challenging because when we're in church, it should be the one place when we have people come through that door, no matter how they dress or appear or how they speak. I think God is saying, let me speak through you life and love and encouragement. And it's like those words of life. Because if you take it on the surface, you can often think they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk to me because some people are very closed and it's hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've just got to welcome. You've got to do your best, not to force it, but to not be put off by the coldness. And it's then really in the weeks later on, you'll hear they kept coming back. Oh, because you spoke to them. It's like, I didn't get that from them at all.
No, you thought you didn't want to know. Didn't want to talk to me.
It was like, you looked like you couldn't wait for me to go. And then they'll say, do you know what, the welcome I had when I came in? Because a lot of the world isn't used to this.
Yeah, so true.
And people are coming in where they're bruised or they're suspicious. But when you're saying, hey, I am interested, we have a place here. We haven't got an agenda. We're not expecting anything from you. We want something for you. When you have that in I'm not going to make judgments on you. I'm just going to speak life. And I say that you're valued. And one of the things I'll often say with someone that's quite difficult is just, I want you to know that we are so glad that you came today. And wherever you are, we believe that God has a great plan for you, and you are always welcome in this place.
Yeah,
and you got to leave that. But I've learned to refrain from forming a judgment of whether I think, did my words work or not? You don't know. Come on, we don't know where people are at, and I think it's about sowing, and everything really in life is about sowing, not reaping. If you live a life that's all about, what can I get? What can I reap? What's in this for me? It will be very shallow. But when it's about sowing seeds, and particularly seeds into others, life responds to what you sow, not what you reap. I've learned that. So what I'm sowing in my words, what I'm sowing in my serving, what I'm sowing in my giving, that's what life responds to. And when you do it around people where there has been maybe a drought of love, a drought of, maybe they've been through times of loneliness, maybe they've had a bad experience of, religion or something, and they come in and they find something genuine, you got to sow it before you see it. Don't wait to see it before you sow it. And that is what we're called to as the church. And we have more of our people just they're ready. I'm going to sow life, and it's got to be genuine. It comes out of our love for the people, because we know it's the second greatest commandment is we got to love our neighbors, we got to love the people coming in. That's what the church should be. They're going to know we're different by the way we love one another.
Yes. And I think as well, when we hear this, that there is something of a reminder for us, because for a lot of us, this may not be new information, but I think what can happen sometimes is that we become complacent because we have been we see new people all the time, and we're used to having them around, but we've got to keep putting ourselves back in the place that it's someone's first time, and they're seeing this all for that first time. And so we've got to almost keep coming back to that. And it's kind of, I think of you and Mum yesterday, and you have been talking to new people for 40 years in church.
Yep.
And you could say, we've done that bit now. We've probably done our fair share of new people conversations. And it's amazing because sometimes you can have conversations with new people and it's like, you're never going to see them again. This is a one-time interaction.
Yeah.
But you keep putting yourself out there, trying to make them feel welcome. And I see you again yesterday, coming to our church here in Raleigh, getting alongside people, speaking to them, encouraging them, making time. You've just poured yourself out for 2 messages. You think, right, where's the green room? Right, I need a break away. But your priority is the people. And even as that, we've got that example in you and in my mum, then I think there's something even for us as a whole church to continue to hold on to that, because it is amazing how we can sometimes go through phases of like, we've got to make all these preparations. We've got to make it feel like at home. I've got to make the effort to make this person feel like a son and a daughter coming in today. But then we can let go. We can lose sight of that. And I think even as we're having this conversation today, I think there's something about coming back to that heart and saying, we're going to hold on to this.
Yeah. For me, there's nothing more important than, when I think about my role, my vision, my whatever, there's nothing more important than people. So it might be God's called me to come and preach, bring the word. But you know what? People come first.
Yeah.
People always come first, whatever you are serving in, or it's like, this is my gift, my ministry, or what I do. Nothing more important than people. And it's how am I displaying that, exercising, and what is the fruit of that? So she loves, so in our home church in Hereford, if I'm in early because I'm about to preach, so I'm, going through preparation stuff, she's there a bit earlier. She is excited. She'll say, that means I can go on the door. So after all these years, I don't know if you realize how unusual this is. She's senior pastor of our movement, and most people would want to avoid that, but she will want to go on the front door, and she'll say, because I want to see who's new that's coming, and I want to welcome them. And she loves people, and she will be down there, then she'll go back down again. And over the years, we're constantly waiting for Mum, because she is with people. She loves people.
Who was last out of our building yesterday waiting for?
Yes.
We're at church yesterday. Is that right? Just waiting for Mum to make her way out?
She is pouring out into people. She is investing into people. And I just think it's such a challenge. It's, for all of us. I can get up and preach a message of the gospel. But if then those people aren't experiencing the welcome of the house from our people, I went and took my seat, said hello to my friends, I stayed within my group. I think we're selling ourselves short of what God put in us to be the very people. And if all of us could take this responsibility on, that this is our house, how do we want people to be greeted? How do we want them welcome? Because it's almost a waste. I can preach a great gospel message, but then if people aren't spoken to,
right,
and they walk in and out of a church, not acknowledged.
It happens so much.
It happens all the time. And we hear, stories about how people just walk into a church and no one ever spoke to me for 2 months.
Yeah.
2 months is like, guys, it really does remove, and it takes something away from bringing the message. So I want to put that, that's how valuable what you can bring and what
Yeah.
you sow into others is. This isn't about great big conversations of getting into the sort of detail of people's lives. It's simply valuing. And I remember when I've been into places where I've felt very intimidated because everyone knows each other. You know, I was at something, I think it was a year and a bit ago, in another nation, and went there, and evidently all these people, they were Christians, but they all knew each other. All these leaders, they knew each other. We were some of the odd ones out that did not know each other, and we were left stood in a corner. They all had
outsiders.
They all had tables to sit with their little plate of food, and there was no place for us. So we pulled up a couple of chairs, and it was only after 10 minutes, one of the girls there just said, "Oh, come and have my seat." You know, but it took a while, and it was like, great, that's really helpful, because we felt so awkward. And it just occurred to me, if that's in a leadership setting, because what are we seeing? Why don't we open our eyes a bit, you know, on Sundays? Why don't we open our eyes in our small groups and the dynamic of the new person? Because we know, Josh, this isn't just about the first time person. Sometimes people have said to me the hardest time was coming back the second time.
Wow.
And the third time, because it's like, oh, well, they welcomed me the first time. I was new. Yeah. But the important ones are those second, third, fourth, connecting, saying, hey, why not come? You guys did a great thing yesterday, which was the lunch for the young adults, which I think has been quite organic.
Yeah.
There were over 50 young adults at a Mexican restaurant, took over the whole place, and they were doing video, because I think it was just such a fantastic live-filled
They use
moment.
it for their social media, because they're like, wow, look at this party every Sunday afternoon.
And you had people who had come for the first time to church, and God had impacted them that morning, and then there was like, come with us, we're going out. And it was like, yeah, I want to come with you. And then in the evening, one of them was at Growth Track. So like, I want to sign up. I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
That's how powerful it is. I mean, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful picture of the church family. For
sure. And I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking about, you know, maybe it's your small group, taking that from a house to a home. Maybe it's the serving area that you're in. Maybe it's just the church hospitality area, you know, at the end, whether it's the cafe or where you're getting a coffee. But let's continue to make sure that we're creating these environments where people can come and find home, because it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
We're so glad you joined us for this episode. We pray it blesses you, but go out and do something with it. All right, we'll be back soon for another episode.